You have all heard of this famous dialogue: like charges repel each other and unlike charges attract each other. For example, if you were to have 2 points in space, any 2 points, say point X and point Y, and suppose at these 2 points you were to keep 2 positive charges. Charge 1, let us give it a name Q1, and charge 2, let's call this fellow as Q2. Then these positive charges are going to repel each other, which means that Q2 is going to experience a force this way and Q1 is going to experience a force this way. But here is the question: how does this force work? What is the mechanism of this force? So let me make myself clear. How does charge Q1 know that there is a charge Q2 at point Y? And similarly, how does this guy over here know that there's a charge sitting right over here? How do they know that they exist so as to push each other? And also, how does Q1 know that there's a positive charge over here and it has to push it? Because if I were to keep a negative charge, then we know it's going to pull it. But how does it know? You understand my question? How do these charges interact with each other even though they're not in contact with each other? That is the million-dollar question. That is the question that you don't investigate in your elementary science class, because it turns out that the question really requires some deep understanding of the nature. It took us quite a while to understand this, but eventually Michael Faraday came up with this amazing idea, and eventually other physicists perfected it, and that's the idea that I want to convey to you today. And if I do this right, this will be a mind-boggling way to think about space. Yeah, that will be a mind-boggling way to think about space. Alright? So here is the million-dollar question. How does Q1 put a force on Q2? If we can answer this question, we will be able to answer also the same question, similar question, how Q2 puts a force on Q1. Okay, so we just have to answer one of them. Just let's look at one of them. So I'm going to start strong. You ready for the answer? Let's start with something very, very clear. Let's make something very clear here. Q1 is not pushing Q2. Do you get that? I put some exclamation over here. I'm telling that Q1 is not the one that's repelling Q2. Unlike what you hear in most naive sentences in which we tend to say that charges repel each other, which gives us a feeling that, these guys are pushing each other away, but they are not. They are not pushing each other away. In fact, Q1 doesn't even know that Q2 exists. He doesn't care what's there in the vicinity. So if Q1 is not pushing Q2, then who is? What is? Here's the answer. Space. Empty space. The patch of space that exists at point Y, it's that patch of space which is pushing charge Q2. So space is pushing Q2. And so you say, wait, what? Can empty space do that? I mean, there's nothing. It's vacuum. How can vacuum do that? Because vacuum is nothing. How can nothing push something? Well, it turns out it can. We tend to think that vacuum is absolutely nothing, it's empty, but then we realize that it isn't. And this completely goes against our day-to-day life intuition that we have built, because we tend to think that, something must exist to push on something else, right? Things put forces on each other. That's what we think, right? But here space is pushing Q2? That's weird, we would say, isn't it? So let's try to investigate this properly. I'm going to break it down and show you exactly what's going on. And eventually, I'm going to try and convince you that indeed space can push charge Q2, and we have some evidence for that. And finally, I'm going to show you that like charges don't necessarily have to repel each other. I will show you that it's possible that even unlike charges can repel, and it's possible that like charges can even attract. Alright? I will show that to you. So, here's the mechanism. Let's assume that we put the charges one by one. So let's start with point x.